A few weeks ago, I put out a video on the forgotten world of Chinese coasters. It's a topic I'm really interested in, so here's another video on it. Today, I'll be counting down the top 25 roller coasters in China. If you haven't seen the first video, it'll be linked in the description if you want to take a look, but overall what it was saying is that there's a ton of amazing coasters in China that a lot of people don't know about. Anyway, on to this video. Before we get started, I just wanted to go over a couple things. First off, and definitely most important, I have not been to China or ridden any coasters on this list. The ranking is purely based on how I think these rides look, with my general preferences in coasters and popular opinion mixed in as well. Second, I did not forget any coasters, at least I hope I didn't. It was really hard to whittle this list down to 25 coasters, and there's lots of rides that look very good but ultimately didn't make it. If you'd like to hear more about all of China's theme parks and roller coasters, click on the link in the description to watch the previous video. And so with all that out of the way, let's get into the list. Taking the number 25 spot will be the various coasters all throughout the country called Fighter Jet. There are 3 of these, they're all clones of each other, and are Top Gun launch coasters by Vekoma. The Fighter Jets start with a launch, followed by this unique rollover camelback maneuver, an element that looks to be very whippy. The rest of the first half is well paced, with lots of airtime, intense looking turns, and this really cool downward zero-G roll. The pacing gets a bit slower in the second half after the mid-course brake run, but Fighter Jet's still got something left in the tank, finishing with a corkscrew and some airtime into the brakes. Overall, Fighter Jet's a really cool concept and ends up at number 25. Steel Dolphin, an Intamin Blitz coaster at Shanghai Haicheng Ocean Park, takes 24th. This is a somewhat family thrill version of Intamin's LSM model, similar to Light of Revenge or Cheetah Hunt. However, Steel Dolphin still looks to give a great ride experience. I'm a big fan of Cheetah Hunt, and this coaster looks to be a little bit better in my opinion. There's 2 launches here, no inversions, but a lot of fast-paced turns and pretty strong ejector airtime. Some of the shaping seems a bit funky, which is weird for a modern coaster like this one, but ultimately the layout looks very strong. There's also some pretty impressive on-ride theming here, most notably with this big shark thing. It looks pretty cool. Next up are the 3 Vekoma Hyperspace warps scattered throughout the country. These are Celestial Gauntlet, Flying Dragon, and Stag's Gauntlet, and they're clones of each other, a similar sort of situation to the Fighter Jet clones. These Hyperspace warps are new-gen Vekomas with a lift hill and height of just 88 feet or 26 meters tall. Despite their modest height though, these coasters look to pack a punch with great pacing, strong airtime, whippy inversions, and smooth transitions. If I had to compare them to anything, it'd probably be a smaller version of something like Lek Coaster at Legendia, and if they run anything like that ride, these small coasters are sure to give a great experience. Our first of many wooden coasters on this list is Jungle Dragon. This ride is a GCI Woody at Happy Valley Chongqing with all of the characteristics that make GCIs what they are: relentless pacing, great airtime, and moments of positive and lateral forces. Jungle Dragon also seems to use the terrain very well, and despite traveling up and down a hillside for most of its duration, is very well paced all the way into the brakes. Dragon in the Jungle takes the next spot. It's a Vekoma Shockwave, very similar to Abyssus at Energylandia. While ultimately has a different layout, the 2 rides share many similarities with their elements and the sequence it takes them in. Dragon in the Jungle looks to be another new generation hit from Vekoma, offering up everything they're known for nowadays. It gives a smooth, well-flowing ride with good airtime, inversions, as well as other elements, and certainly looks to be a great coaster. Coming in at number 20 is Vinci Ride. In my opinion, this looks like the best B&M wing coaster in the world. It opened recently in early 2022 and seems like a more modern take on the wing model. There's punchy inversions on this ride as well as lots of strong airtime moments, which includes a wave turn. Between this and a lot of B&M's newer coasters and those under construction, it looks like this company that stayed inside their comfort zone for the last 10 or so years is starting to make big strides in innovation. Time Travel at Hot Go Park Happy Jungle World takes the number 19 spot. It's a Gravity Group wooden coaster with lots of airtime, fast-paced transitions, and what looks to be a great ride experience from start to finish. Something I really like about this coaster is how it uses the terrain. The ride actually dives under a bridge at 2 points, and throughout the whole layout you go from being down in valleys to up on this hill. It's a very creative ride. There's lots of these Gravity Group Woodies in China, and Time Travel definitely looks to be one of the best. Next is Catapult Roller Coaster, previously known as Launch Roller Coaster at Sunsu Cultural Park. This is an S&S air launch coaster similar to something like Max Force, as well as OCT Thrust SSC 1000 and Bullet Coaster, which are also in China. Catapult roller coaster looks to be an improved version of those two, with this one featuring an inversion and some airtime moments, which include ejector hills, a wave turn, and a twisted hill. Of course, this coaster's also got SNS's signature air-compressed launch, and it reaches 84 miles per hour, or 135 kilometers per hour, and has a max height of 197 feet, or 60 meters. Coming in at number 17 are the three Intamin Mega-Lites in the country, which are Fly Over Mediterranean, Lightspeed, and one's just called Mega-Lite. I've ridden Piraten at Jew's Summerland, which is a clone of these three coasters, and it's a fantastic ride packed with powerful airtime and intensity. From POVs, the Chinese clones seem to run a second or two slower than Piraten, but I doubt that would do too much to affect the overall ride experience. These clones are short, compact coasters that pack a punch, and it's nice to see that there are three in China. Another Gravity Group Woody takes the number 16 spot, this being Jungle Trailblazer at Oriental Heritage GMN. It's hard to differentiate these various gravity groups from each other because they're all pretty similar, well-paced rides filled with airtime and quick transitions, all looking to give fantastic experiences. This one in particular flies through its layout, delivering burst after burst of quick ejector airtime. These Chinese Woodies look spectacular, and this coaster is no exception. Next up is Dueling Dragons, the inverted side. This is a dueling Intamin coaster at Guangzhou Sunac Land with both a sit-down and inverted track. This allows the ride to go through all sorts of cool maneuvers, and both tracks look to give a great experience. Coming in at number 15 is the inverted side in particular. It looks a bit weaker than the sit-down track in my opinion, but still fantastic. It's got a swing launch, 4 great inversions, and a couple pops of airtime. Intamin hasn't made that many true inverted coasters, but I'd definitely like to see more if they're anything like this. Fjord Flying Dragon at Happy Valley Tianjin takes the number 14 spot. This Gravity Group Woody is filled to the brim with tons of airtime moments, even more so than the other rides of the same model in China. This coaster's got 20 airtime hills throughout the ride, which is incredible, and almost all of them look to deliver. Fjord Flying Dragon is actually a clone of Jungle Trailblazer at Fantawild Dreamland Zhuzhou, and both look to run very well with great pacing from the first drop to the final breaks. I just mentioned how Chinese wooden coasters from both the Gravity Group and GCI seem fantastic, and Fjord Flying Dragon is definitely an example of that. Invincible Warriors is a new-gen Vekoma at Fantawild Land, and it'll come in 13th here. This ride looks fantastic, very similar to other new Vekomas with a lift hill like Light Coaster, Phoenix, and the Hyperspace warps I mentioned earlier. This ride is only 92 feet or 28 meters tall, but it looks to give a fantastic experience with lots of airtime, butter-smooth inversions, and some great inversions, including a 0G stall, the first on any coaster by Vekoma. This coaster's layout and pacing look wonderful, and just from looking at a POV, I'd say it's probably Vekoma's third best coaster, only behind Light Coaster and Fly. The ride I'd compare Invincible Warriors most to is Phoenix at Fjord Summerland, which I happen to have ridden. Both coasters are a similar style of ride with lots of small airtime pops, inversions. Basically everything I said earlier about Invincible Warriors applies to Phoenix as well. Where I think Invincible Warriors shines, though, is in the quality and strength of its airtime and the intensity of the transitions in between its main elements. Despite loving Phoenix, one of my main gripes with it was a lack of raw power, and that looks to be something that Invincible Warriors has. Of course, there's no way for me to know for sure without getting out to ride it, but this coaster looks fantastic. Dueling Dragon takes the number 12 spot. It's a dueling Gravity Group Woody at Happy Valley Wuhan with both a red and blue side. The two tracks have different layouts, but they're very similar, so much so that I just grouped them into one for this ranking. This coaster features some sweet airtime, especially lots of twisted airtime hills and moments of lateral forces. In addition, Dueling Dragon has some really cool train interactions, with the most notable instance being this high five a little bit after the first drop. There are barely any modern wooden dueling coasters out there, with the only ones built in 2010 or after being this and Joris and de Dock at Efteling. Nevertheless, this looks like a fantastic ride, and the concept of a dueling coaster mixed with a ride of this quality will always result in a win. When you think of the world's best flying coasters, certain rides come to mind. Rides like Tatsu, Flying Dinosaur, Fly, and Manta. But one that's often overlooked comes in at number 11, and that's Starry Sky Ripper at Joyland. This is a crazy B&M flyer with a straight drop and insane elements like a 540-degree 0G roll into a fly to lie, a vertical loop, which is the only iteration of that element on a flyer and it looks insane, and also a double corkscrew finale. Starry Sky Ripper is definitely up there as one of the world's best flyers, and while it doesn't look quite as good as Flying Dinosaur or Fly in my opinion, there's no denying this is a fantastic ride and on its own worth a trip to Joyland if you're in the area. Next up is the Sitdown track of Dueling Dragons, the ride I mentioned earlier with both this and an inverted side. Like I talked about, the Sitdown track looks a bit better in my opinion due in large part to the pacing. It flies through its layout, taking its elements like a zero-G roll, airtime hills, and intense turns at a very fast pace. For this list, I decided to split Dueling Dragons into its separate tracks since they offer wildly different ride experiences from each other, but if I were to combine them into one spot, here's what I'd probably do. Taking the scale of this ride and its two elite tracks into consideration, this would rank a few spots higher than it does now, probably around number 7 or 8. Dueling Dragons is an extremely impressive feat of engineering and looks to be a fantastic coaster. Jungle Trailblazer at both Oriental Heritage Jinan and Oriental Heritage Ningbo are clones of each other and will share the number 8 spot on this list. These are once again gravity group wooden coasters and in my opinion some of the best gravity groups in the world. Like most of the others, these two coasters are filled to the brim with powerful ejector airtime, offering both quantity and quality in that department. Something that's special about these two rides, though, is that they feature an inversion, a corkscrew following the drop and first few hills. The one at Oriental Heritage Jinan was the first gravity group to be built with an inversion, something that's been replicated a few times since. I say the first to be built with one because Hades 360's refurbishment, in which its corkscrew was added, took place 2 years earlier. These two Jungle Trailblazers look fantastic and earn their spot towards the top of China's coaster collection. And in the number 8 spot is another Jungle Trailblazer, this one being at Oriental Heritage Wuhu. In my opinion, this looks like the best gravity group woody in the country and one of the best in the world. Like the coasters in the previous spot, this ride has a corkscrew, great pacing, and tons of airtime. I had a really tough time deciding between this and the ones at Jinan and Ningbo, but ultimately I put this one ahead due to its more unique layout. This coaster's got a massive camelback after the drop and some other larger hills in addition to the signature gravity group small ejector hills. It looks amazing. We're done with gravity group wooden coasters on this list, but coming in at number 7 is a GCI. Python and Bamboo Forest is located at Nanjing, Sunac land, and definitely appears to be one of the best GCIs in the world, along with another one that we'll get to later. This ride looks awesome and appears to be GCI at its finest. It's filled with all of the elements that make this manufacturer what it is. The small, powerful airtime hills, quick transitions, lots of moments of lateral forces, and a layout that uses the terrain to its advantage. Python and Bamboo Forest is almost a mile long with over 70 seconds of ride time, making it the longest coaster in China and the 6th longest wooden coaster in the world in terms of track length. GCI coasters have a very unique feel to them, and there might not be a ride out there that encapsulates that more than this one. Soaring with Dragon takes the number 6 spot. This is an Intamin swing launch coaster at Hefei Sunac land that is actually the fastest multi-launch coaster in the world, reaching 78 miles per hour or 125 kilometers per hour. This ride's got a non-inverting loop, which is the tallest non-inverting loop in the world, as well as a massive overbank that inverts, some airtime, and a lot of fast-paced turns toward the end. This coaster is another example of modern Intamin at its finest, and looks to be an extremely fun, forceful, and re-rideable attraction. It's also got a super detailed dragon statue that's inside one of the coaster's helixes, and it's essentially just a way cooler version of the Kisses fountain on Candemonium. Nevertheless, Soaring with Dragon looks fantastic and is one of the most unique Intamins out there. Another Intamin with Coaster Through the Clouds takes the next spot and is a massive hyper, also being the tallest coaster in the country. It's located at Nanjing Sunac, which is the same park that Python and Bamboo Forest is at, completing a great top 2. I like to think of this ride as Millennium Force's much younger Chinese cousin, if that makes sense. The two coasters are very similar. They're both massive Intamins with a focus on a sense of speed, including some airtime hills as well as graceful yet intense turns and overbanks. Coming from someone who's ridden neither of those two, I think Coaster Through the Clouds looks quite a bit better. The main difference between the two comes down to the pacing and quality of airtime, with Coaster Through the Clouds appearing better paced and seeming to feature stronger airtime. This is a modern coaster with an old school layout, and it looks to be a fantastic ride. Beyond the Cloud is the newest coaster to open in China that's on this list, and definitely one of the best. It's a Mach Rides launch coaster at Suzhou Amusement Land Forest World that's also the tallest and fastest coaster Mach's ever built. It starts off with a launch out of the station that reaches 80 miles per hour or 129 kilometers per hour and looks to be really forceful. A common complaint about lots of MOC's launches is that they're forceless, and I definitely agree when it comes to the launches on Helix at Liseberg as well as Time Traveler. But Beyond the Cloud and some more of MOC's recent coasters definitely seem to improve on that, which makes a ride a lot better. After the launch, the coaster traverses a double out and back layout with elements like a top hat, fast-paced zero-G roll, airtime hills, and more. This isn't the longest ride out there, with under 3,500 feet of track, just over 1,000 meters, and a ride time of just 40 seconds, but it looks to pack a really solid punch into its short duration. Beyond the Cloud is definitely up there as one of MOC rides and China's best coasters. Next up is another wonderful creation by MOC Rides, this one being Flash at Lua Adventure. It's a hypercoaster, one of only 3 in the world that MOC's built, and the first one they put out, and it certainly looks fantastic. MOC's always been innovative with new coaster concepts, and they brought a very unique layout to a model that tons of manufacturers have tried their hand at. This ride's got a twisted drop, the biggest loop in the world, and an additional inversion with a zero-G roll, as well as tons of ejector airtime and other elements. The other 2 hypers by MOC are Hypercoaster at Land of Legends theme park in Turkey, which is actually a clone of Flash, and DC Rivals Hypercoaster at Warner Brothers Movie World in Australia, which has its own custom layout. I'd definitely be in favor of more of these MOC hypers popping up around the world because the 3 operating ones look fantastic. Coming in at number 2 is Wood Coaster at Night Valley. This is, in my opinion, GCI's magnum opus. It's a massive wooden coaster located on the side of a hill pretty much in the middle of nowhere. I talked about Night Valley, the park it's in, a little bit in my previous video, but the gist of it is that it's a failed attempt at a massive amusement destination called OCT East. The whole place is pretty much abandoned, but it still continues to operate along with this coaster. Wood Coaster itself looks to be a better version of Python and Bamboo Forest, and pretty much everything I said about that coaster applies here as well. It's amazing how well this ride uses the terrain, picking up speed as it makes its way up and down the hill. This coaster is packed with airtime for days, relentless pacing, snappy transitions, and looks to be a top 5 wooden coaster in the world. It's an amazing ride with an intriguing story and definitely a coaster that seems to have been forgotten by history. So after all those incredible coasters, what could number 1 on our list be? It's Danaconda. This, simply put, looks to be one of the most batshit crazy rides out there. It's an SNS full-scale 4D coaster, essentially a smaller version of Edge and Ica and using the same ride system as X2. Both Edge and Ica and this look to be 2 of the most intense and best roller coasters in the world, offering an unmatched ride experience. You're traversing this crazy layout with Raven turns, zero-G rolls, fly to lies, and other insane maneuvers while flipping the whole time. This type of ride definitely won't be for everyone, and I haven't ridden anything like it yet, so I'm not even sure I would like it, but Danaconda looks to be an out-of-this-world experience and will take number 1 on this list. So that's my list of the top 25 roller coasters in China. Remember that I have not ridden any of these, so this wasn't really as much of a set-in-stone ranking video as it was a, hey, look at these cool rides you might not have heard of type of video. If you've been to China and ridden some of these, feel free to comment down below letting me and others know your experiences. If you'd like to know more about the world of Chinese coasters, I highly recommend you watch my previous video, which is a much more detailed look at stuff like all the manufacturers working there, as well as lots of the theme parks and various chains. Once again, thank you so much for watching to the end of this video. If you enjoyed it, consider dropping a like and subscribing if you want to see more, because there will be a lot more coaster content coming to the channel.